Hello and welcome back to another video from Average FPL. Today we've got a bit of a bonus video. What we're going to do is we're just going to look at some of the major transfers that took place yesterday on deadline day and not only discuss whether they're potential options for our fantasy league teams, but also how they might affect current assets of players that are already in those teams and that might be in your fantasy league teams either already or you might be thinking of getting them in. So we're just going to start with Nicola Vlasic, who has signed for West Ham. He used to play in the Premier League for Everton. They've still got his old Premier League photo on there. And I think he's got a chance of playing. With this player, I'd say the situation for players like Ben Rama and Fornals might alter. So if I had Ben Rama in my team at the moment, or I think I'd be concerned that Vlasic will take some of those minutes. He's going to see a bit more of the ball, which will take it away from Ben Rama a bit. And if I was looking at getting Ben Rama in, I probably wouldn't anymore. I'd maybe look elsewhere at different midfield options. Now West Ham's fixtures are good going forward, but you've also got to bear in mind that they're also going to start playing in the Europa League as well. So the squad is quite thin. There's going to be a lot of rotation, and that rotation will lead to not knowing whether your players are going to start in Premier League matches if West Ham decide they want to really focus on the midweek fixtures in the Europa League. So next one that we're going to look at is going to be Cucurella for Brighton. So I think this player is one of the ones that is likely to play quite a bit from the get-go. And what you have to think about when you're looking at Brighton is they've already got a very good defence. I think they were fourth best for chances conceded last season. And this player is fresh off getting to the Olympic final with Spain, and he played very well in that tournament, and he's a young player, very energetic left back. He can also play in midfield, so there is a chance, Brighton sometimes deploy wing backs, that he will have the opportunity to get further forward and create chances and maybe even get attacking returns. Now Brighton's immediate fixtures look okay. I wouldn't say they were amazing, a bit mixed, but I think there's a chance that this player, Cucurella, could have a real impact going forward, and I, at the moment, would have him on my watch list. So, next player is going to be Emerson, signed from Barcelona to Spurs. Now, the problem we've got with Spurs is now they have three right backs. So they've got Aurier, Doherty, Emerson, and also Tanganga, who sometimes plays there. Now, I would say Aurier's the least likely to play. I would think Doherty would have been playing already, rather than Tanganga if he was in favour. And I would say you're not going to sign a right back for 25 million and not play him. So I'd probably put Emerson at the top of the right back list at the moment. I think he's a really good player. Again, can be quite attacking, technically good, young defender, will have lots of energy. I think 5 million is a good price to be looking at that Spurs defence getting in if he starts. Okay, so if it looks like he's got that position locked down, I would really consider bringing him in for that 5 million. I think that's a good price point for him. Spurs also have quite good fixtures going forward once they get past Chelsea. Their fixtures where you would think, well, Crystal Palace, Villa, Newcastle, they could potentially get clean sheets there. So I'd really consider Emerson going forward as well, as long as he's playing and he's the clear starting right back. So Tomiyasu at Arsenal. Now, Arsenal needed defenders, and I don't really think that one player is going to turn it around overnight. But with him and Ben White added in, Ben White was missing because of COVID, it's going to be hard to have that immediate impact. But I think over time, they probably will start getting it together a bit more. Arsenal kind of have to, really, otherwise they're going to get relegated. But those fixtures look really good, and at 4.5 million, I would go with Ben White just because he's settled in, he's had longer to settle in as my Arsenal option if I was going to go in defence. But those fixtures, scream the opportunity for clean sheets there. And if you're going to move forward with Arsenal, he is an option, but I would still go with Ben White. I think if you have Ben White in your team, he's not going to take his place. He's more likely to play alongside him. Arsenal sometimes also play with a back three, so there is a space for another Arsenal defender as well. Not that I'd recommend doubling up on Arsenal defence, of course, but I thought it was worth reviewing this player, especially with Arsenal's fixtures coming up. So, Saul at Chelsea. Now, I was quite surprised that Atletico Madrid let this player go on loan, because he's been a real focal point in their sort of the base of their midfield for the past 5-6 seasons, really. And in the fact he's gone to Chelsea, I wouldn't necessarily consider him a threat for players like Mason Mount and Havertz and those players that are going forward attacking wise. He's more likely to compete with players like Jorginho and Kante for that base midfield role. So in terms of Fantasy League, I wouldn't really be looking at him as an option. I think he's more of the sort of player that will assist the assister and play those through balls going forward to the wingers, who will then cross it in or pass it in for the finish. So as a fantasy asset, I wouldn't really bother with Saul, although he is a really good player. So Solomon Rondon, signed by Everton. Okay, so I would think I'm a Calvert-Lewin owner, and I think really it concerns me a little bit. I don't think Rondon's going to start. I think he'll be back up for Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin. But Benitez has worked with him before. He knows the player. He's gotten in someone that he likes. Maybe that he thinks he'll have a positive influence in the dressing room in terms of putting the players in favour of Benitez. It's quite a smart move by Benitez as well, being former Liverpool, to sort of put players in that he works well with and that like him into that Everton dressing room to help the players get on board with what he's trying to do. I don't think Calvert-Lewin's immediately under threat, but obviously having an extra striker in, he will eventually take minutes off somebody. They wouldn't bring him in solely for the dressing room. They'd bring him in to play bits and pieces. So whether that's mainly cup competitions or not, it does concern me slightly if Calvert-Lewin starts playing less minutes as the season goes on. But I wouldn't transfer Calvert-Lewin out immediately if you have him. I would really just wait and see how this plays out going forward. Everton's fixtures look really good going forward as well, so I would hope that Calvert-Lewin is playing as many minutes as possible. So Dan James, he got signed by Leeds. I really think that Dan James isn't an option. I think Leeds' fixtures look great. I would be slightly concerned if I was a Rafinha owner or a Jack Harrison owner, because they play similarly and they play in the same positions, that attacking wide midfielder role. Dan James leads the record transfer, I think. So he's not going there to sit on the bench like he did at Man United. He'll be going there to start. So if I was owning Rafinha or Jack Harrison, it's not great timing for you with those fixtures coming up where you were thinking, I've owned Rafinha through some difficult fixtures early on, and now I'm going to get the benefit of having him. That might not be the case. It'll be really interesting going forwards who plays the majority of the minutes. Would I get Dan James in? No, not right now. I think I'd still be inclined to have, if I had Rafinha, I'd keep him and wait and see, but I'd have him on my potentially transfer out list going forward. So the last one we're going to look at is going to be Edouard at Crystal Palace. So they needed to sign a striker. Patrick Vieira is trying to play a bit more football rather than sort of the longer ball version that Crystal Palace have been playing recently, where they didn't create that many chances going forward. So I think he'll be involved. I think he'll probably start. Whether he starts instead of or alongside Benteke, we'll have to wait and see. So we'll find out that. I don't really like Crystal Palace's fixtures going forward, but then again, that gives you a bit of time to assess him and see what you think, whether he's worth getting in. I would stay away. I just think it was worth noting in terms of if Patrick Vieira turns around that style of play, then if Crystal Palace start creating some more chances, then it might be viable, but at the moment he's not on a watch list. This is the last player we're going to talk about, and I would just like to finish by saying that if any of these players, especially the players moving from abroad, you have to wait and see, because they're not just joining a club and they're just going to play football. They're moving their whole lives. So it's homes, families, finding schools for the kids, things that you wouldn't necessarily consider in Fantasy League, and you need to give them that time to settle in. If you get any of these players in and then you're disappointed that they're not scoring you points immediately, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. The players that have moved from British clubs to British clubs, they'll probably settle in a bit easier. But the players that are sort of having different cultures, different languages, it's challenging for them. So, it doesn't mean they're not going to hit the ground running straight away, but I wouldn't have, I would restrict your own expectations moving immediately forward, getting any of these players in. And like I said, if you're owning those players like Calvert-Lewin, Rafinha, Benrahma, I really would just monitor their minutes going forward, and whether the formations and the systems are going to change. They might play alongside new signings, but if they're having to share minutes with new signings, that would be a concern for me. So yeah, I just wanted to put out a video just to discuss the new transfers from yesterday. It should be really interesting going forward. We're going to have a little look at some big hitters as well over the next week or so, before we start previewing for the next game week. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.